Hello students and welcome to my English class. What can you observe in this slide? You can see a woman helping a lame and a child here in the other picture is giving alms to a beggar. You might have seen this kind of scenes in your life, or you might have been one helping or doing this act of kindness or caring. This act, these actions which help to build a happier society, it may not be only about money or giving money. We can also give our time, ideas and energy. When we see someone doing some act of kindness or thoughtfulness, it inspires us to be kinder person. Compassion is the basis of morality. Have you heard it? Yes. In today's lesson, we shall learn what is moral action, written by Mahatma Gandhiji, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhiji. In this lesson, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhiji deeply speaks about moral action and he gives various examples. It's a kind of discussion of what moral action means. Let's proceed. The author's note: Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also regarded as the father of the nation, was one of the greatest leaders of the Indian nationalist movement. Gandhiji was born on 2nd October 1869 in Porbandar, Gujarat, to Putlibai and Karamchand Gandhi, the Diwan of Porbandar. He was trained in law at the Inner Temple, London. Later, he returned to India in 1891 and set up his practice in Rajkot. In 1893, Gandhiji was offered a job by an Indian firm in Natal, South Africa. So he left for South Africa and he stayed there, worked there for more than 20 years. And in the course of time there, due to his experience, personal experience, he opposed the discrimination of the Indians. In 1915, at the age of 45, he returned to India. He set about organizing peasants, farmers and urban laborers to protest against excessive land tax discrimination. In 1921, Gandhi became the leader of the Indian National Congress. He led nationwide campaigns for erasing poverty, expanding women's rights, ending untouchability, and above all, for achieving Swaraj. And he was the key person in leading the country into freedom, to the path of freedom. Gandhi was a superior writer. He had a dynamic style of his own, which reflected his optimism and conviction. His style of writing was straightforward, specific and comprehensible. Are you reading with me? Do you know what is the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhiji? Yes, students, it is My Experiments with Truth. This is the first paragraph of the lesson, What is Moral Action by M.K. Gandhi. Open your textbook and read, students, along with me. When can it be said that a particular action is moral? In asking this question, the intention is not to contrast moral with immoral actions, but to consider many of our everyday actions against which nothing can be said from the conventional standpoint, and which some regard as moral. Most of our actions are probably non-moral. They do not necessarily involve morality. For the most part, we act according to the prevailing conventions. Such conventional behavior is often necessary. If no such rules are observed, anarchy would be the result, and society, that is social intercourse, would come to an end. Still, the mere observance of custom and usage cannot properly be called morality. Now, the writer begins with the question. And what is the question? What is the question, children? The question is, can you tell me the question? The question is, when can it be said that a particular action is moral? Now, the writer is not trying to contrast moral with immoral action. What is moral action? Moral action is considered with principles of right and wrong behavior. So, moral action is considered with the right and wrong behavior. What is contrast? Contrast is the fact of comparing two or more things in order to show the differences between them. Alright, so to contrast, to compare, it's not to compare moral with immoral action. What is immoral action? Action which is not considered to be good or honest by people. So when he says, when a particular action is moral, he doesn't want to compare moral and honest or dishonest actions of people. He wants to say that, and then he is also saying that nothing can be said from the conventional standpoint. What is conventional? Conventional is following what is traditional or the way something has been done for the long time. So most of the actions are probably non-moral. They do not necessarily involve morality. Now, our behavior depends on the conventions, customs. Our behavior is customary. If no such rules are observed, we observe rules, we observe regulation because we are taught. Many of us follow the customs, rules and regulation, and that's why our life in the society is peaceful. But imagine if no such rules are observed, then anarchy would be the result. What is anarchy? A situation in a country or organization in which there is no government, no order or no control. If we don't follow rules and regulation, then there will be no order, no control in the society. So, M.K. Gandhi states that observance of customs and usage only cannot be called morality. There is more meaning for morality. Clear? The writer moves to the second paragraph. A moral act must be our own act, must spring from our own will. This is the criteria he adds to his opinion about the moral act. Now, what is a moral act? It should be our own act. It should spring from our own will. Now, imagine if we act mechanically, there is no moral content in our act. Such action would be moral if we think it proper to act like a machine and do so. How can a man understand morality who does not use his own intelligence and power of thought? If a man uses his own intelligence, his power of thought, and does any action, it is called a moral action. Otherwise, if he does it mechanically, he is like a log of wood which is swept along with the current. The writer illustrates it with an example. Now, here the example is of the messenger, the king and the messenger. You have it in your textbook, paragraph 2. Now, it may be moral of a king to pardon a culprit, but the messenger bearing the order of pardon plays only a mechanical part in the king's moral act. But if the messenger were to bear the king's order, considering it to be his duty, his action would be a moral one. Now, when can the messenger's act become a moral action? If the messenger bears the order, considering it to be his duty, it can be called a moral action. If it is done mechanically, without any feelings, without any love, then it is called as immoral action. That's what Gandhiji says. Now you have the picture of Wendell Phillips. Gandhiji says, sometimes a man defies convention, challenges customs. Defies is challenge. Conventions are customs. So, man defies, challenges customs and acts on his own with the view to do absolute good. Many times you might have seen people who don't care for the society, but they want to do absolute good. Such a great hero was Wendell Phillips. Now, Wendell Phillips is an abolitionist. He led the abolition movement in America. He fought against the slavery. He fought for women's rights, prison reforms, and labor unions. Now, what did he say? Addressing to an assembly of people, he once said, "Till you learn to form your own opinions and express them, I do not care how much you think of me." You must learn to think on your own and express your opinion. Only then, when your action becomes moral, it's not only following customs and traditions blindly or mechanically. It doesn't involve morality. Action should be done of our own will without any thought of reward or gratitude. Only then it becomes a moral act. Now, Wendell Phillips, he didn't think of himself. He thought of the society and did absolute good. He worked for the abolition of slavery and he led the abolitionist movement, anti-slavery movement, and he fought, and afterwards also he stuck to his point and he helped the people in his country. So he says, till you learn to form your own opinions and express them, I do not care how much you think of me. So don't act as I acted. Don't behave as someone else. Don't copy others blindly. You think well and take your own decision. In this picture, you see the images of God or angel protecting the human being and the environment. Thus, writer says, when we all care only for what our conscience says, then alone can we be regarded to have stepped on to the moral road. We have to listen to the conscience, our inner voice. Then we can decide what is good and what is bad. We shall not reach this stage as long as we do not believe and experience the belief that our God is within us and the God of all is the ever-present witness to all our acts. We must remember that. Never forget, there is God who observes all our actions, who protects us, who guides us. And we must believe that the God of all is the ever-present witness for all our acts, good or bad, moral or immoral. He watches us. Understood, students? See, conscience means the part of your mind that tells you whether your actions are right or wrong. So, we must always listen to the conscience. Look at these images. Here you have the picture of people feeding the poor. Feeding the poor, hungry. So in the third stanza, M.K. Gandhi tells us about another criteria of moral action. It is not enough that an act done by us is in itself good. It should have been done with the intention to do good. Underline this line in your third paragraph. Now, third paragraph tells us that action, it's not enough if the action is good. It should have been done with the intention to do good. Look at this picture here. The person here, the people are donating. They are feeding the poor. Now, if a man who out of great pity feeds the poor, another who does it with the selfish end, only with the motive of winning prestige or with some such selfish end, do you think it's a moral action? If a person feeds the poor with selfish end, with motive of winning prestige, is it a good deed? The act of one person who feeds the poor with pity is a moral action, and the other who feeds the pity with the intention of winning prestige or with a selfish end, we call it a non-moral action, isn't it? Now, here you have the image of who is this person? In history, you might have heard about him, isn't it? He is Emperor Alexander. Historians have called Alexander as great. Wherever he went, what did he do? He took Greek culture, he took Greek language, Greek arts, Greek manners, isn't it? Greek culture, and today we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization. But what was the intention of Alexander the Great? His intention behind all his conquests or his expedition was only conquest and renown. Who can therefore say that his actions were moral? It was all right that he was termed great, but moral he cannot be called. That's what Gandhiji says. Can we call him, we can call him the great, Alexander the Great, because he carried, because of his expedition, he introduced Greek literature, culture and arts to other parts of the world. He popularized Greek culture, but he conquered with the other kingdoms and won popularity. So, his actions cannot be considered moral. He can be called the great, but his actions cannot be considered moral. That's what Gandhiji says. So, when we do an action, the intention should be good. It is not enough that an act done by us is in itself good. It should have been done with the intention to do good. Underline this line, children. That is to say, whether an act is moral or otherwise depends upon the intention of the doer. It depends on the person who is doing it, who is planning it. While thinking of morality, all that we need to see is that the act is good. First thing, the act should be good. Second, it should be done with good intention. The result of an action is not within our control. Who is the giver of the fruit of the action? God alone is the giver of fruit. So first thing is, in this part, we learn that we must perform moral act. It should spring from our own will. Second, it should be done with good intention. And third, we should always believe that God alone is the giver of fruit for our moral